Hey everybody, Brad the Guitarologist here. You guys may recognize this amplifier from a previous video that I shot. This one was made by Radionic Industries in Chicago. I did a video with this one and another amp. Well, this one has been sold, and I'm going to have to ship it. But the gentleman I sold it to asked if I would install an isolation transformer on the input just for good measure before I ship it out. And of course, I'm always happy to oblige on that sort of thing. So this video, I thought I might take the opportunity to show everyone how to hook up an isolation transformer if you choose to install one. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, stick around. Here is the box that the transformer came in. Cool thing about this one is the primary could be 115 or 230 or 120 or 220, however you want to do it. Basically, it's a 1-to-1 transformer, so it doesn't really matter. And this is at 0.435 amps. So that's what we're going to be using. Let's open it up and take a look at it. Here is the back of this amp with the back door off. You can see our little Alnico speaker here with our output transformer attached to the speaker. This transformer is the power isolation transformer that I just installed. This was a pretty good bit of real estate to install this. Every amplifier is going to be different, so you'll have to just kind of look around on your chassis to see where the best place to install one of these might be. A lot of times they have to get installed in the cab, like attached down here on the bottom and then run up or so forth. But this one had a good piece of real estate right here on the chassis, so I went ahead and attached it here. Drilled a hole right here with a rubber grommet to feed our primary windings through. The other windings, the secondary, are just going around the back side of the cab down there since it's wide open. This has got some codes on there. There are those if you're interested. If you'll recall, obviously this is a series filament amplifier, otherwise we wouldn't need the isolation transformer, but we had a weird set of tubes in this thing. It was 18 GD6A, 60 FX5, and a 36 AM3, just a weird set of tubes. There were a few different models in the mid-60s that used this set of tubes, and pretty much all of them are going to be very, very similar. Even if it doesn't use exactly this set of tubes, if it's a series filament amplifier, the principles that we kind of learn here are going to be about the same regardless. One of the things I also did was install a 3-prong cord instead of the original 2-prong, and always when you're installing a cord on something like this, you want to use some kind of retainer on the cabinet so that you don't you trip on the cord and yank everything out, because then you might be in real trouble. But on this transformer, it actually gives us instructions on how to hook these up. It says, let's see here, see if we can read this. Let's focus in. Isolation transformer for 115 volts, 50 or 60 hertz primary. Tie the black to the red black, and also tie the yellow black to the green black. So that's what I did here. That's why we have the pairs twisted. Let's pop open this chassis and I'll show you where they end up going. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention also, because I'm a bit of a perfectionist, I did go ahead and replace the capacitors in this thing. This can right here was over in this area. The original retainer actually was screwed right there, so I used the hole for that retainer to drill and grommet for our primary leads to come through, so didn't have to really drill I had to widen that hole, but I didn't have to drill an extra hole, so that I guess was good. So I got rid of this can capacitor. This was not original anyway upon closer inspection. This is a Philco labeled can cap. So some tech had been in here before and changed that. Somebody had also added this one as a bypass cap. That thing's 400 volts. As a bypass cap, it didn't have to be nearly that rating, so I went ahead and replaced it with this one. Or actually, no, I take that back. That one was actually paralleled in. They left in one of the capacitors in this can, and these are all the wrong values. And they went ahead and paralleled this capacitor also in the same spot, and it was in this position. So, and they were supposed to be 40, 40, and 30, but I put in, obviously modern equivalents, 47s, and I beefed this one up to a 50, and actually that was a good decision because this thing sounds pretty killer. Here are our primary windings coming through. You can see we've tied those together. When the two-prong cord was coming in, it was coming into here, and then on the other side of the switch, it was going to the common ground, which is the common throughout the amp. Ultimately, it was tied to this point. So that's what it was doing before, but now we have the hot wire coming into the switch, so that goes to the primary, and here's our neutral, so that completes the circuit. There are a couple different ways you could do this. Now obviously you could wire these so that the primary winding of the isolation transformer was basically always on if you had the amp plugged in. That's not what you want. You're going to have to take the switch, take all the leads off the switch, and use your switch to switch the primary of your isolation transformer, not the secondary. There would be a temptation to do it on the secondary because it's less work, but this is the way to go. You want to have everything shut off completely, including the isolation transformer primary, when the amp is plugged in and not on. As you can see here, I shrink tubed this lead going back out. Here's our third lead here for ground, tied to the chassis at this point. And that's on one of our new lugs that we drilled there for mounting the isolation transformer. This lead here is on the secondary of the isolation transformer, and the transformer itself says this is some kind of static prevention. I think it's basically like a ground wire. We've brought our leads over. One of these is going to the common ground, not the chassis ground, the common ground that's elevated above ground. The other one is going to the point where our hot wire on our two-prong cord was previously going. So we had one going to the switch and then to the common and when the switch was closed, and the other one was going here to the rectifier. So we've got our secondaries just going to the common and to the rectifier. Again, we've changed those. We had to move. This is the capacitor that isolates the common ground from the chassis ground. This capacitor and that little resistor right there, those two together isolate the common ground from the chassis ground. And I'll show you the schematic in just a moment and we'll take a look at that. But this was actually mounted over here in this position from this side of the switch to chassis ground here. So it was going from common ground to chassis ground over here, and this one was over here all along. There was a wire running from this point over to here that tied together all the chassis ground, and there was another one running all the way over to here to tie the chassis ground together. So that's essentially what you have to do. Mainly you want to, oh, and also before I forget, this little transformer right here is an isolation transformer that was already in this amplifier. It already had one actually for the preamp tube. So what that does is that prevents your preamp tube if it was to get shorted between the filament, say, and the cathode, or between the filament and the grid. God forbid something like that happens, you won't be in danger of being electrocuted on your fingertips, because obviously you're going to be plugged into the grid of this tube with your guitar. So you know, if that were to short on that tube, then you'd be in big trouble. So that prevents that, and that actually is a pretty good safety measure already built into the amplifier. So Really, this amp probably did not need this isolation transformer, but at the end of the day, this does make it safer. It's an extra measure of isolation. It's an extra measure of safety. So it's not going to hurt anything for sure. And for the for the amount of money that was spent on it, it's definitely worth it, I'd say. Money well spent, especially in this case where I kind of agreed to do the work more or less for the cost of parts. So, but yeah, that's how you would wire up the isolation transformer. Let's take a look at the schematic. Alright, you guys may recall seeing this schematic before when I made a video about this amp earlier, but here it is again. We can see here the two components I was talking to you about a moment ago, the little capacitor and resistor that isolate the common ground, which is attached to the switch, attached to this primary of this isolation transformer, and ultimately attached to the grounding points for like your volume and tone knobs and all that stuff on this side. And then on the other side of these components you have chassis ground. So what that really does is it kind of isolates the grounding for the first tube, the preamp tube. This cathode is grounded here to the chassis, and so is everything associated with the input. So it kind of isolates, in addition to the isolation transformer, which you see here, it kind of isolates everything associated with the preamp from everything associated with the power tube and the power circuitry over on this side. So yeah, there's the schematic. That is how you install, generally, that's how you install a power isolation transformer. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you don't mind, hit the subscribe button to see videos like this in the future. And for now, y'all take care.